Hey, welcome everyone to Covenant City Podcasts, where we exist primarily to provide a theological and philosophical examination of our approach to local church ministry, and then secondarily to assist other churches in thinking through ecclesial matters from a biblical perspective. In this episode, we have Sifu Joshua Vang with us, who is a pastor, elder, and co-church planter here at Covenant City Church. And he oversees the covenant groups that are being established. And in saying that, I just want to give us our aim and our purpose of this particular episode and what we're trying to tackle and what we're trying to do. The aim of this episode is to tackle our philosophical approach to covenant groups. We value community. We believe that we, again, are a gathered people. And so we want to help our members to think through, process through, and to understand why we are establishing these covenant groups. In the middle of the summer here, we'll be launching these things out and again, asking our members to join them. And so again, this episode is dedicated to helping them think through why we do what we do. So in saying that, I want to ask Sifu Josh again to engage in this dialogue and to engage in this conversation and maybe just give us quick understanding of why is there a need for covenant groups, Josh?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on the podcast. Here at Covenant City Church, we really see covenant groups as the platform for which we will foster mutual edification within the body of Christ, right? Within the church itself. And so we see, again, throughout the scriptures, the command to serve one another. And so we really just want to provide a platform, and I say a platform because I recognize that there are a lot of platforms and a lot of ways that the believers can edify each other and serve one another. But at Covenant City Church, we believe that a well thought out approach and plan can really help to be a catalyst for our people. And so we just really want to see our people grow to love one another and then in turn to serve each other as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I made mention of it a little bit earlier in terms of we value community. That's something that's important. And it's not only important because of the type of people that we are, but I think it's something that we see within Scripture, right? God has saved us unto himself, yes, in terms of individual salvation, but he's also saved us to a people, to be a church, to be a community. So community is vital in our gospel living. But what would you say, why is it significant now more so than ever in light of the cultural current that we're in? Mm-hmm. Why is community important?
Yeah. And I would say, by God's grace, we've had the past 18 months to really help highlight the importance of community for us, right? With the pandemic forcing people to really quarantine or hold themselves up in their homes, really kind of shrinking their social circles. Even outside the church, I don't think anyone would deny that community isn't important. It's actually vital to one's physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being, right? Yeah. But even more so, I would say even more so in the church, it's starting to show its importance, right? Yeah. In all the ways that community encourages people physically, mentally, emotionally, community for the church also it encourages us spiritually, right? Exactly. There's something that's being said and proclaimed as we gather and meet together, right? The scriptures say, where two or more meet together in my name, there I will be also. Yeah. That's true, right? That's not just some something to put on a coffee mug and sell in a Christian bookstore. Right. That's actual truth that is being proclaimed there. And so as believers, when we gather, the scripture is true that the Lord gathers with us. And that encourages us, that strengthens us spiritually. And so it's vitally important to the Christian life to a believer's faith, that they don't neglect the ministry of meeting together. It's actually a ministry.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
And I think we need to see it as a ministry. And I think we'll talk more about it too, but we need to see it as not only that are the pastors ministering, but the people, the church, the gathered people are called to minister to one another. So there's a responsibility there. Mm-hmm. I think community is also important too, especially when we think of ourselves within the Western context.
Yeah.
And we see our Hmong people as a subgroup underneath that context. We know that Western society is very individualistic. And so there is not really this value or this emphasis that's put on community. And I think we've seen through the developments of just the Hmong people being in America here, for 50 years now, that give or take a few years, right? Mm-hmm. That we've kind of assimilated to that type of culture. And in assimilating to that type of culture, we've actually, our community has been hindered by that. Mm-hmm. I know that talking to a few of our church members, we talking about how our first generation parents were really, there was really this love, this camaraderie, this gathering, this kind of boja and shilu and stuff like that, that was so vital, that was so congruent with the gospel message, that when the gospel hit the Hmong people, that community aspect hit us well. And we do that really well.
Yeah.
But our second and third generation seems to have lost their way in that aspect of the gospel, and they don't value it as much. And I think, to your point, their spiritual health, their spiritual vitality is being hindered by that. Yeah. You have any thoughts in regards to kind of that development?
Yeah, and so my experience is pretty vast, right? Not specifically just the Hmong context, but I've kind of served, in Omaha. I've served in New Jersey amongst people who were not Hmong, right? And so this has been a struggle. I mean, community's been a struggle no matter where you go, right? So you recognize that it's a need, across cultures, and it's a struggle across cultures.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
And so it's again transcends cultures. And highlights the need for it. I would say, to that point, it has been interesting to see how quickly we've assimilated. And granted, I think there are some really good things that we've assimilated too.
That's right.
I wouldn't say it's all bad,
right.
But there is that danger that we're throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? And so I think when we detach ourselves too far from that, right? Like we begin to lose some of these very beautiful pictures of the gospel that we would have otherwise.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And you and I, we went to school together, to college together, right? And I think that's the beauty of I know more of the, for lack of a better term, kind of the white American experience, where when they were observing us as a Hmong people, they really valued that kind of community aspect, that the Hmong people that were at that school. And so we modeled that well. And I wonder if in some sense, again, we're losing that aspect. Yes, we've assimilated, not all of it has been bad, but there are components of it that if we're not careful and if we don't think carefully about it and biblically about it, we can lose. Mm-hmm. So I know that, again, we've emphasized about hitting some of the philosophical approaches to covenant groups. And so I wanted to ask this question, and I think the cultural aspect was important. It is important, but I also wanted to ask kind of maybe a structural question. So this is the question: how does the structure of covenant groups differ from program-driven models? So really what I'm trying to get at is we come from a particular context. We've done church, especially in the Hmong sphere, in the Hmong circle, a particular way. And we really have kind of fell into this program-driven model. And so how does covenant groups differ from that type of model? But maybe even before we get to that question, maybe let's try to define what do we mean by program-driven model?
Yeah, so from my experience and I think when we think about program-driven models, we think really about the ministry is done by professionals, right, or specialists, either the pastor or the elders or the leader, the group leader.
That's good.
And as a regular church member, right, your only responsibility is to attend, right, come and receive, right. It's similar to, if I'm a chef, right, like your only experience or your only buy-in into the experience is that you show up and you eat the food that I've prepared for you. And so in the program model, that seems to be really the model that I've seen, right. The ministry is really reserved to the professionals, the specialists, those who are more spiritual. Right? And so that's how I would define a program-driven model.
That's good. So a little bit more of event-driven. To your point, you attend, I do. You're passive, I'm active.
Right. Yeah.
So a program model operates in that way, and we see it in the Hmong context all the time, right? We see it in terms of the different, multiple, varied banquets that we have throughout the year.
Yep.
All of the concerts, the fundraisers that we have, even Sunday to a certain extent is an event, right? And again, would love to focus and dedicate an episode to just talking about the Sunday gathering. But man, we see it merely as an event to attend, and in doing so, deprive our people of so much spiritual food and nutrients that needs to be received by that gathering. So we definitely have, again, bought into culturally the consumeristic elements of the Western world, and that has shaped our church. And so I think what we're trying to do here at Covenant City Church is to kind of fight against that cultural wave.
Absolutely.
And to kind of go against the grain. And so I think one thing that maybe we could bring as helpful language in talking about maybe a program-driven model and kind of what we're trying to do in regards to Covenant City Church is really a program versus platform. And again, I'm trying to use language that kind of can help us to understand, give us kind of word pictures to view these things differently. But the way I see programs is that the program kind of houses people. These are people that, again, it's the program, this is a house, and we just shove people in there, and it encapsulates these people. Whereas I think what we're trying to do with covenant groups is we're trying to say this is the platform and this is not the end all be all. Whereas the program model is this is the end all be all. This is it. This is the show. Whereas we're saying this is the platform and it's not the end all be all. It's the starting point. It's where we jump off to actually evolve and grow and engage in further ministry. Excuse me. So I think when we look at program model ministries and paradigms, we don't want to engage in that per se. We want to see our covenant groups as more of a platform.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right on, right? Like in a program model, it's kind of that like get in where you fit in, right? Like you're either in or you're out. With the covenant groups, we're really saying we recognize that the Lord does not call believers to sit on the sidelines, right?
That's good.
In fact, the Lord has actually gifted you with gifts, skills, talents, passions, right, to be used for victory, right, to help us achieve the kingdom mission, right? And so we really see the covenant groups, right, the in-house, internal. This is where you work those things out. This is where you refine that amongst each other, and then. Again, who knows where the Lord's going to call you from here, right? You may not be at Covenant City Church using your gifts here for the next 25 years. The Lord may call you to, the jungles of Rwanda. Who knows, right? But this is supposed to be that platform to for sure, exercise those gifts and to refine them.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of the Ephesians 4, right? I mean, we've been given the apostles, the prophets, the teachers, evangelists to train the people for the work of the ministry, right? So yes, I mean, there is a equipping element that the community of believers have amongst one another, a responsibility to one another. And so we cannot take those things necessarily for granted. Yeah, excellent. I think in talking about this then, what are helpful paradigms, or rather maybe could you share paradigms for us and for our people at Covenant City Church in terms of how are we thinking about these things? Because, in talking with a lot of just the congregation members, sometimes I kind of see that our people, or at least just Christians in general, they fall into kind of two ditches, right? Mm-hmm. They overemphasize and say, well, the church is just the people of God, right? We're just these, arbitrary people that's just kind of organic, and we're just all over the place, and there's no structure. And I think we can err on that end. Yeah. But then there's also another aspect where I always hear people say, well, church is like a business. And every time I hear that makes me cringe, because you're like, I know what you're trying to say, but the church is not a business. Yeah. So what's language that you could use? What's a paradigm that you can give us that would help us to see how we're thinking through ministry here at Covenant City Church? Yeah.
In my ministry, I've been largely impacted, hugely impacted by the Trellis and vine paradigm, right? And so again, in this paradigm, it's holding both of those truths, right? It's sitting in that tension of saying, okay, yes, we are an organic movement, and yes, we do need structure. Yes. And so I feel like it's a perfect paradigm, right? Yeah. Like, what are the ministries or the programs per se that will assist the vine in growing in the direction that it should, right? Yeah. Because as we know, vines, they're kind of an invasive species, right? Like, if they're not guided, they just start growing everywhere and all over. Yeah. And that's not necessarily a good thing, right? So the purpose of a trellis is to ensure that the vine actually grows the way that it should. Oh, I see. That would be the language that I would encourage our people to continue to use when they think about not just covenant groups, but all of our ministries and programs, right? Yeah. Like, we're not saying that this is the end all be all, right? But this is a guide to help us grow.
Yeah, that's good. That's really helpful. So you have the trellis, the structure, which is in the church sphere, the programming, right? So we're not anti-program, but we're just anti how you use that program, right? Yep. But we're saying that the program is a trellis that kind of sets the sail, sets the pace of where we're going. And then the vine, which is the church, the organic aspect, can begin to use that trellis to grow and to be what it's called to be.
Yeah. And I would also say, in the same sense that we're not anti-program, I would also say that by having a trellis, we're not anti-organic growth. Yeah, that's good. Right? We understand that growth is organic, and there's only so much that we can do, and we rely on the Lord and the Holy Spirit to do the rest of it. But we are saying, and we see clearly, that there's a right way and a wrong way for growth to happen. Okay. Right? Yeah. And so if we're not careful in making sure that the fruit that we're seeing is actually the fruit that we want, then it can be just as dangerous and deadly as having no structure.
Oh, yeah. That's helpful. In the book that C.B. Josh is talking about is Trellis and the Vine by Tony Payne and Colin Marshall. It's an excellent book for us, helpful for us to wrap our head around and create categories in our minds to think about ministry. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So as we close out our episode here, wanting to ask, I know we've really wrestled with cultural aspects, philosophical aspects of how to view ministry, but I also kind of want to ask kind of a practical question to kind of end us here. So the question is this, what do we as Covenant City Church pastors and elders, what do we want our people to get out of this ministry? What do we want them to end up basically doing?
Yeah. I mean, again, this is really in our covenant groups. There's the end goal is really kind of twofold, right? One, we want to see the affections for amongst the church members to grow and to be stirred, right? To be strengthened. This should end up in us caring deeply for one another.
Yeah.
And we hope that, or in loving one another,
Yeah.
kind of the natural outflow of that, and how we express that love is through service to one another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it's cyclical. As we serve one another,
Yeah.
naturally, it that endears us to each other even more, right?
Right.
So as we serve one another, it feeds into our love for one another. As we love for one another, that love feeds into our desire and our eagerness to serve each other.
Yeah. That's good. So if I'm hearing you right, there is a sense in which there's this internal transformation that we want our affections, or the people at Covenant City Church, we want their affections to grow for the church.
Yeah.
And in their affections growing for the church, in them gathering and rubbing shoulders and being with one another, that they would actually have a genuine and authentic desire to serve one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's amazing. That's helpful. I think there's a fear even in asking the question, right? Like, what do we want you to do? And sometimes we can so emphasize upon the external that we miss out in that internal transformation.
Yeah.
So maybe it could kind of look like this, and see if I'm off by any stretch of the imagination. But it could be in a sense where the covenant groups is a program that we come and attend, but then what could branch off from those covenant groups is just the exercise of hospitality, inviting each other to each other's house, having dinner, having play dates with your kids, just sharing life on life. So that, like we said earlier, the programming is not the end all be all, but it's the platform to which it produces more relationship and more rubbing of shoulders and accountability and edification. Would you say that be true?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the hope, right?
Right.
That's what loving one another, serving one another looks like. In your covenant group, you may find that, so-and-so is really having a hard time with this newborn that they have.
Right.
They've got 4 other children.
Yeah.
Let's relieve the 2 for a night off.
Right.
We'll cover dinner. We'll have the kids over. We'll provide the childcare, and let's love on this couple and allow them a night off to just enjoy each other.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's what that's another example.
Yeah. There's a myriad of examples. I mean, even with evangelism, right? Like, as you and I meet at the covenant groups and we become friends, and we have other friends that are not believers, that we can invite them into our friendship, our space, and together evangelize and not be on this island. Yeah. So there's so many things that can happen from that, but
and again, that's seeing this as a platform, right? That's the language we've been using all along.
Yeah.
This is only meant to kind of springboard us into other ministries and other areas of passion where we've been gifted, right? This isn't where we're saying that it's only during this weekend within these hours that you're required to exercise your spiritual gifts to serve one another.
Yeah.
No, we know that that's just not true. That calling for us as believers is constant.
Yeah.
But it is a platform that helps us to do that.
That's good. Well, as I just want to let you guys know, Josh, that I appreciate you coming by and sharing with us, just our aims and our pursuit of the covenant groups. And again, excited to have you back again. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we have you on, but again, just appreciate your insight and just all the work that you've done to kind of think through this. And I think this will serve our people well in thinking through what's the purpose and aim of the covenant groups. So I want to thank you. So as we close out here, just wanted to say that if you are on YouTube, we'd love for you to click the like button, subscribe, and get notification for all of our upcoming content. And if you're on other social media platforms, would encourage you guys to share this. As much as this is for Covenant City Church members, this is also for the broader church family, and helping them think through ecclesial matters through a biblical perspective. I am your host, Sifu Mikyang Yang. As for Sifu Josh, we'll see you guys later. Love God and love others in joyful obedience to Christ. Blessings.